On this week's episode of the Irish History Boys with me, Tim McGarry and Dr. Cormac Moore, we're discussing the Free State trying to assert its independence in 1925 while still being dependent on foreign firms. The border in Ireland becoming a security border during the Troubles, as well as illegal border crossings by the British Army and the conviction of the Guildford Four. Don't miss it, the Irish History Boys.
October 20th, 1925. Complaint about the Irish Free State offering contracts to foreigners instead of to English firms. Lieutenant Colonel Grant Morden, an Englishman who presided at an Irish club dinner in London last week, though he does not appear to have any visible connection with Ireland, complained that certain Irish Free State contracts had been given to foreigners instead of to English firms. It is a mistaken policy, he said, because Ireland sells 97% of our exports to Britain. On the other side, it was pointed out that 90% of all the goods imported into the Free State came from Great Britain, and the sums paid for imports have far exceeded those received for exports of later years. The argument was not developed at the dinner, but it deserves a little consideration. It is true that a big German firm has been contracted to harness to Shannon to supply the Free State with electricity derived from the water power of the Great River. It is also true that no English firm is in a position to undertake the work on the same scale. It may be taken for granted now that no English firm is lamenting over the fact that it did not get the contract. British and French contractors have also secured work in the Free State.
That was beautifully read by Dr. Cormac Moore. You're listening to the Irish History Boys with me, Tim McGarry, and obviously Dr. Cormac Moore, who read that beautifully, even though he stumbled over the word 97%. But
I did, yeah.
You did stumble. It's okay. It's okay. It's
Yeah.
all right.
Thanks, Tim. Thanks.
It's early in the morning.
That's
it's
good,
okay.
yeah.
No,
It made me feel better about myself.
No. I just, yeah, well read. But this is quite important. We're the Irish History Boys. If you don't know, where have you been before? Why have you not been listening? It's an excellent programme about Irish history, which looks at stories that appear in the Irish news 50 years ago, i.e. 1975, and 100 years ago, i.e. 1925, and that story comes from October the 20th, 1925, and it's about the Irish Free State, which has been in existence really only for 4 or 5 years, and they're trying to exert independence from, exert as much independence from Britain and assert their sovereignty, though this is a man, Lieutenant Colonel Grant Morden, saying, the Irish are being very silly. They're not giving work to England.
They're giving to foreigners.
Giving it to foreigners.
So they don't consider British as foreigners, you know, which would be news to a lot of Irish people at the time. So and it was this. There was this. And the Free State government was accused by Republicans, you know, and others that they were aping British customs. You know, as we discussed recently, the legal system basically was the same, pretty much the same one as the British was adopted, even though they had their own Dáil courts. You know, they were, you know, accused of wearing, you know, tall tales and headgear and all that. That was the kind of British aristocracy. They were still fawning to the British. That was the accusation against the Irish Free State government. But they did try to assert their independence, whether it was under pressure from Republicans or their own supporters. They did try to assert as much independence from the empire and move away from it as much as possible, and that included giving contracts to foreign countries, like, you know, on the continent. This is controversial with Irish people too. There was particularly Dublin Corporation gave a contract for a French company to clean the streets of Dublin.
Right.
You would have thought they could have got someone from Ireland to do that, you know, but and that was controversial. It was actually going. Why did you do that? You know, and then famously Siemens, you know, the Siemens company in Germany, they got the contract to build the hydroelectric station in Arctic Russia on the Shannon. Well, so that was vitally important for giving electricity to the Free State.
A couple of things, because you know more about this than me. And it's strange to say that, but it is true.
Is it?
He's a doctor. He knows these things. Am I too far away? Sorry. Yeah, no, Dr. Moore, you know more about this than me. But a couple of things. First of all, we did an episode on the radio about the Irish neutrality during the Second World War.
Yeah.
It was actually 1925. When Ireland, I think they were at the League of Nations at this stage,
but
they adopted the policy of Irish neutrality, which was an expression of their independence.
Their sovereignty. Yeah.
So this is an issue. The Republicans going, you're not going far enough. We are, we're a sovereign nation. But also the economic reality is that They're skint. They've just had this civil war. Their infrastructure has been wrecked by, not just by Republicans, but they were tearing up their own, blowing up their own railways and things like that. They're absolutely skint. We know from a certain other story, the Boundary Commission, which is going to happen, that when the Boundary Commission issue reaches a head, that was sorted by the British government and the Irish government reaching an economic settlement, maybe a financial settlement. In other words, the Southerners being paid off. We know that's coming.
Yeah.
So the Irish government is basically...
Well, nobody knew it was coming.
Nobody knows it's coming at the time. But the Irish government is a free state. It's a new free state. It's basically skint, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Like the Civil War was cataclysmic. Like it was there was a boom during the First World War years, and then up until about 1920. But then there was a deep depression afterwards, and both North and South suffered from economic crises for most of the 1920s. And then
a lot of emigration, was there?
A lot of emigration, a huge amount of emigration. There was even we discussed previously there was a famine even in 1925 in the West and around the islands. So now it obviously wasn't the same scale as the Great Irish Famine, but it still was. People died, and there was huge hunger and people really struggling. And the compound all of this obviously had this cataclysmic famine, which not only was financially disastrous but reputationally disastrous as well for this new fledgling state trying to get ahead. And it still was very dependent on Britain. So pretty much it didn't have any industries. Most of the industrial base of the island of Ireland was gone. It was actually part of Northern Ireland, whereas most of the Free State was still a very agricultural economy, and it was actually feeding Britain in many ways. Yeah. So it wasn't a good outlook, and it was so they obviously wanted to assert their independence. They joined the League of Nations. We'll talk about that in a future episode. They also did engage with other countries. They tried to reach out. And see, Germany's very interesting because the whole Siemens thing with Germany. There's huge disapproval of that from British press because Germany, of course,
but it's only 7 years from the end of the First World War.
Yeah, so like FIFA, for example, when they allowed Germany and the Central Powers into football, the British associations left.
Was that right?
Yeah, they left, and they weren't happy that they were let back in. This is a good few years after the end of the First World War. So there still was this very much anti-German. Even the Daily Mail, who was seen as pro kind of Nazi, you could say, to some degrees, some of its editorials in the 30s. Yeah, it was very anti-Germany in the 1920s. Maybe they didn't like the Germans that were in power at the time, But the Irish Free State was being considered disloyal for actually using a German company, Right. So, and why aren't you using British companies? We're all the same, cut from the same cloth. Yeah. Which is not how the Free State saw it. So I have another book coming out as well.
Have you?
Yes.
Let's talk about that in another episode. All right.
Wait, on Lemon's Pure Sweets, I've actually called...
On Lemon's Pure Sweets?
Lemon Sweets are a very famous...
Would you rather Lemon Sweets or the Boundary Commission there, Dan? Would you? It's a clue.
It's a great story. But I've called
Lemon Sweets is the... we talked about this before, Lemon Sweets.
Yeah. We're talking about it with the whole factories thing. So Lemon Sweets, I'm co-writing with a guy called Alan Tate. His dad and granddad were managing directors of Lemon. So it was a big factory in Drumcondra in Dublin, not too far from the airport. They had a massive shop in O'Connell Street. It was a very famous brand. But they were given kind of protection by the Free State. So when the Free State government started to set up customs barriers, and it created its own kind of protectionist taxes.
Right.
So tariffs basically, for English companies in particular, coming in, they'd have to, or people trying to sell their products would have to pay tariffs, imported products. So it was beneficial to indigenous companies like Lemons because they had a tax on confectionery, sugar and confectionery. So it was good for Irish companies. Loads of Irish companies did really well when these protection duties were in place up until the 60s. Right. There was loads of sweet companies in Ireland, about 40 or 50 of them at one stage. And they were all doing quite well because of the protection duties. But once they went, most of them went by the wayside. But how the English companies got around was they actually set up factories in Ireland, Free State. So
Okay.
because they couldn't sell their products going across the border or going through the ports.
Well,
and that.
this is the Trumpian argument, isn't it? And you set up tariffs, and people will go, it's too dear to export to America. I'll build my factory in America, isn't it?
That's what he's saying,
that's his argument.
But it doesn't work. It leads to higher prices. It leads to less choice.
Right.
And ultimately the consumers in America will pay it, and the consumers in Ireland were paying it.
But the English companies did set up here.
The Cadbury set up. I'm talking about confectionery because that's the book I'm just completing. But you had also tariffs on tobacco.
Right.
So Gallagher set up a factory in Ireland. You had tariffs on shoes and boots. So they would come across the border or from England and set up factories. So that's how they often kind of navigated it in terms of. It still was a very Cadbury's was almost considered an Irish company. Because it was set up in Ireland. It was kind of run very separately to Bourneville, the headquarters.
Yeah.
So, but that's how some English companies navigated these kind of. I wouldn't say they're nationalistic. They kind of were nationalistic moves, I suppose, by the Free State government to offer protection to indigenous firms. I was trying to spawn kind of the indigenous industries. But it's a very hard thing to do if you've got a small population, though. If you've got a big population, it can work, but a small population, and Ireland had been contracting a lot since the famine. And it kept on contracting for decades afterwards.
Yeah.
And so, it was very hard to sustain it, and it was very hard to grow new industries in Ireland.
So the early days of the Free State would have been a bit miserable, really, wouldn't they? I mean, economically, people were still very bitterly divided between the Civil War is only over a couple of years. Those divisions don't go away. Quite a long time.
Well, I think it was 100 years or something. Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael formed a coalition.
So nobody's in agreement as to how to run the country. Very divided. Economically, we're dependent on England.
Yeah.
Huge emigration, possible famine. We've got, and again, you've got Northern Ireland on top of that, which is kind of, if you're a pure nationalist, you go half the country. We've lost sort of a third of the country as well.
Yeah.
So it was a bit of a miserable time, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. It was grim, and it was a really tough. And there was a big thing about law and order as well. And that's the Free State government, the Commonwealth government, are very proud that it got law and order on track.
Yeah.
But it economically, it cut pensions. It cut basically social welfare. It was one of the reasons why De Valera took power in 1932 was because the Commonwealth government was so unpopular, and it was seen as targeting the people with less money. But it was kind of straight in times. But it still was trying to assert its independence and its sovereignty, and moving away from the British Empire, even though it's kind of been pulled back into it for necessity to some degree, economically. And even within the British Empire, like it was through the Commonwealth, it played a decisive role in giving dominions a lot more power and a lot more independence.
It was a good example for the other powers and for the other.
Yeah, but also, there was a lot of conferences. We'll talk about in the next episode about League of Nations and Commonwealth things like that. But it also was involved in conferences where the British government conceded to giving more independence to dominions, which allowed the Free State and other dominions to get more sovereignty, which was used, ironically by the Commonwealth opponent, De Valera, when he comes into power. And then it joins the League of Nations as well. So even sport, it's kind of it's showing itself to the world as an independent nation. And so it's making these economic decisions. We're on our own now. We're going to go out, contract to Germany or France or wherever. We're not going to just
And it has economic independence. It has the freedom to do that, hasn't it?
Yeah, well, that was one of the last things that David Lloyd George agreed to before the treaty was the fiscal independence. So it actually can devise its own tax policies. And back then, actually, income tax was a far less generated revenue than customs and excise.
Right. You said that before, so you get less money from taxing people's income.
And it does make sense because there wasn't that many PAYE workers. There was more people were on the land, or they were, they just weren't paying tax, income tax. It was the being taxed on goods coming in and out was the main source of revenue. It is another example of a new state trying to find its feet, trying to assert its independence, and the British trying to pull them back into the empire. Always trying to keep them within the empire, keep them very British, and being decisively rejected by the Free State where it could.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting, this article on October the 20th, 1925, has a bit of a go at the British. Our friends in Great Britain have no valid cause for complaint. They are doing very well indeed out of this country. It's not for love of Ireland that many big British tobacco firms built factories to compete with Irish manufacturers. They did not sing the wearing of the green when they decided to raise those buildings in Dublin. They came because they wanted the money paid for tobacco in the Free State. They will spend their profits in their native land. Wow. We see that's kind of... So economically, we're kind of teetering on the brink, are we? Or are we kind of...
Ireland is in big trouble, you know, Free State's in its straitened financial times. And,
right.
But then, I like Cosgrave, he think he said a good few years forward, I said, like, the poor and those who immigrate, like, you know, they're not really wanted as well. You know, I'm paraphrasing him here now, but he was saying, like, we're better off without them, you know, people who are essentially sponging off the state.
Right.
You know, so there was this kind of hard attitude as well to people who were less fortunate and who weren't able to survive. Like, yeah, get on the boat, you know.
Right.
Like, you're not doing us much good here because you're not contributing to the economy, kind of thing. So there was this kind of really hard approach as well towards people who were worse off and who were really struggling, and so many people were struggling because there were so few opportunities. And we were, it's really important to emphasise this, that we were an agricultural country that just did not have much of an industrial base and had a very little capacity to grow new industries.
Yeah. There's some weird comment here about sort of Irish workers not being very good, isn't there? The British and French contractors have secured work in the Free State. These things happen because Irish firms and Irish workers have yet to learn the elementary facts about enterprise and work that are the commonplace of industrial life in other countries. The Germans, Belgians and French will teach the people useful lessons if the people are willing to learn. These foreign contractors will go and Irish people will remain wiser. Let it be hoped for their experiences. Yeah, which is a bit kind of...
It is, well, maybe it's saying, well, I've just said there that it's not an industrial country, so like what do you have to go on? So surely it is good to get advice and good practices, good strategies from these other
There's
companies.
a bit of a hint of the lazy Fenians there, isn't there?
Well, there is.
A bit of a hint there.
Which is, I suppose is surprising for the Irish news. Because the stereotype of Britain and even Ulster Unions was that, you know, this kind of simian kind of viewpoint of the Irish, like that they're lazy, they're drunken, they're fighting, you know, they don't work, this kind of stuff. Maybe there is a hint of that in it, you know. Yeah. But also, I think, or let's be more favourable and say they're talking about there just isn't the expertise to start industries in Ireland. We need advice and help from foreign countries who will. It's like a lot of multinationals are in Ireland now, in Dublin and elsewhere. There's loads of indigenous companies have spawned. A lot of startups have spawned from those multinationals. So they come in. Obviously, they create loads of jobs and all of that. Don't pay a lot of tax. That's another story. Yeah. But they create a lot of jobs. But they also give good ideas to their employees who can ultimately start new companies and start spawn new industries. So I think that's what the Irish is trying to say here.
And I think one of the other aspects of this is no matter what, Ireland is independent. Well, it's not fully independent. It's not a republic, but it has it has a certain status. But its relationship with England is always going to be problematic. It's still the big island next door. No matter what, you're going to be economically, if not entirely dependent, you're going to be very, very close economically to England, no matter what.
Well, now we would say no, not so much. Yeah. But up until we joined the EEC, that was the case. Yeah, it was Ireland was totally dependent on Britain, and that's why when Ireland wanted to join the EEC in the early '60s, and when de Gaulle blocked British joining, Ireland withdrew its application as well because it couldn't join without Britain, so dependent on it. So so obviously times have changed now. Like Britain is not the biggest partner or trade partner to Ireland now. You know, so it's I think Belgium is actually bigger than Britain. So which is
Belgium is bigger than Britain.
Yeah, from economically, like, you know.
Really?
So, yeah, I think that's that. What? That changed their like. I could be wrong here, but I'm pretty sure.
Oh, I hope you are. I hope you are.
I know you do. I'm pretty sure Belgium did overtake Britain as a trade from Ireland.
Right.
So maybe that's EU related.
You're listening to the Irish History Boys. If Cormac got it wrong, please let me know. I do want to know, and we will debate it in great detail next time. You can contact us on Irish History Boys.
And also, if I'm right, please let me know so I can...
Yeah, I'm not going to give out the address now after that. IrishHistoryBoys@gmail.com. You can contact us. But that is very, very interesting. Economically, things are not looking rosy back in 1925.
No.
And then if we fast forward to 1975, things aren't looking rosy in Ireland, north and south either. It's a bit,
this is about border trespass.
This is
grave concern at border trespass. The Irish government is expected to make a formal protest to Whitehall over a border crossing by 5 British soldiers at the weekend. A patrol crossed the frontier between County Armagh and County Monaghan while chasing a group of men on a tractor, and there were complaints that the soldiers raided a farmhouse, took over a car, and generally terrorised the area. Telegrams have been sent to the Taoiseach, Mr. Liam Cosgrave, about the incident, and the affair will be discussed at a routine meeting of the Cabinet today. A government source in Dublin said last night there was grave concern over charges levelled by people from Castleblaney, County Monaghan. The men being pursued by the troops were understood to have reopened a frontier route that had been blocked by the army for security reasons.
Wow.
So that's and this was happening regularly.
Yeah.
Now they were kind of British going, oh, we don't know where the border is. It's kind of no man's land here, and but they were pursuing, say, the IRA in you'd imagine most cases, and overstepped the mark literally.
There was a whole issue even before Good Friday Agreement of 1985 was partly about security. It was about other things as well, but there was a whole big issue about hot pursuit and whether or not the Irish government would let the British government allow British troops to pursue IRA units if there was an attack and stuff, and that was a big issue for years. About whether or not they could cross the border because the IRA would run across the border and wave and go, hey.
Well, it was always described from unionists in the British government that they weren't being extradited and they were let do what they want, and it was a safe haven, and it could spring attacks from the border areas at any time.
But this doesn't appear...
That was an ongoing diplomatic issue.
Yeah, this particular issue doesn't appear to be terrorist-related. It's boys opening the border roads that the British government used to close fairly regularly, and the farmer causing great inconvenience to farmers and business on the border areas. And these boys sometimes just took their tractors and dug up whatever fortifications and chucked them in the
But it is. I love talking about the customs barriers, but But there was customs barrier there which were very prohibitive. For decades of people crossing the border. But during the Troubles, this is the time, when Ireland and the UK were joined the EC. So the actual customs barriers were kind of being deteriorated. They weren't as prominent as they used to be. But then you had a security. So a lot of people growing up in the north, they remember the kind of the border as a security zone as opposed to a customs zone. And that was the whole part. Colm Tobin, the writer, had a book about I think it's 87. Of walking the border, essentially, and the paraphernalia he talks isn't the customs posts, it's the watchtowers, the lookout posts, it's the barriers, the barbed wire, the spikes, all of these things are put up.
I drove down to Dublin the other day to do it, and you kind of genuinely, as I was driving through, I just remembered the old days, because now it's straight road from here to Newry for dual carriageway and then motorway the whole way. And
you just it goes from miles to kilometres, and the phones change.
Yes, and you get a wee message from Vodafone going, "Welcome to Ireland." I'm in bloody. Anyway, let's not go there. But no, that whole area I remember all the time. The 80s up until the 90s. You come to Newry, a couple of miles outside Newry, the tails back started, and there were watchtowers on the hills, and then when you got to the border, close to the border, massive big security operation, and you could be pulled over at the whim of a British soldier. You could be waited there for hours and hours and hours, and it took forever to get through. And there was massive security operation around that area, and for years it went on. And just to kind of fly through now, it's a different world altogether. But this is 50 years ago, and the British Army they were caught across the border. There were a couple of incidents where they were alleged to have gone eliminated a couple of people. I remember a particular one incident. But this incident during this is a Mr. Owen Brennan is complaining that the soldiers are said to have burst into the farmhouse of Mr. Owen Brennan and searched it. Mr. Brennan said they demanded my car keys, took my car from outside the house to continue the chase after the tractor. They were already 2 miles into the Republic. 2 miles is quite a bit.
That's a bit now. You can't really go, oh, we didn't know where we were. Across the border.
And there were several incidents of sort of map reading errors.
Oh. And that was their excuse. The diplomatic excuse was, they got their coordination, their orientation wrong with their maps, all this kind of stuff. But they were obviously chasing the IRA, and they weren't going to stop. You know,
Yeah.
the one if they saw someone.
Well,
but,
what do you mean they can't even catch a boys in a tractor? What's wrong with that British Army? What the hell were they
well,
on?
maybe
Were they walking?
Maybe the tractor was very, very close to the border. You know, so, but I think in '76, like there was 8 British SAS soldiers that were arrested by the Guardian Irish Army for. So that was a bigger incident than pretty much any at the time of you know, this is encroachment. You know, all 8 of you got lost and they're you go a bit across the border. So this was happening. You know, like the border was a zone of violence for sporadic periods, even before the Troubles. Like so, before the customs barriers came in 23, it kind of was the really bad violence in 22. There was a lot of kind of craters dug up. There was a lot of roads became impassable. There would have been specials, kind of doing checkpoints on roads. So it did become a kind of a border, a physical border, I suppose, for security reasons. And then the customs barriers come in. But afterwards, you have sporadic moments, like particularly the border campaign, the IRA border campaign from 56-62, when the IRA actually targeted the infrastructure of the border. So that's when you have these spikes and craters really going up on an industrial scale. I think there's 200 of those checkpoints and border roads closed during that border campaign.
Oh, right, from 56 to
62. And there was only like something like 12 roads that were passable. Right. So it was really inconvenient for people. Now, Nashes were aghast at this, but unions were going, well, it has to be done for security reasons, you know, to stop the IRA. So they obviously, it worked quite well, I think, from a security point of view. Like the border campaign was not a success by any stretch of the imagination. It didn't work at all. So that was the blueprint for when the Troubles comes. This is how we're going to deal with the border. Even though it's a very porous border.
It's 310 miles long, is it? And, and there were several big issues about the army just coming and blocking country roads in the middle of nowhere. That people took great resentment to, particularly in the south, going, you know. But it didn't appear to be much formal disagreement from the southern government, was there? Or did they complain?
Well, I think from this suggests is that they're doing it diplomatically. You know, there's a lot of back and forth between Whitehall and Dublin. You know,
but there were several cases of the army coming, just dumping concrete bollards and stuff in the middle of roads, and then farmers going, well, hang on, that's my field over there. I'm going to have to drive around 12 miles to get to my field.
There's instances of the British Army would put in big blocks or spikes, and then the locals would dig them up. Then the British would put in those blocks and spikes, and then the locals would dig it up. And this has gone back and forth for yonks. Because the locals were totally resistant to it, whereas the British just kept on doing it. So it was a very very different times. Do you remember like all the kind of the customs posts going out of business as such?
I do, because I remember
the kind of the infrastructure going basically.
The early 80s, there were still kind of customs posts, but they always waved you through. Nobody ever, I don't remember ever being stopped at a customs post by customs people to search anything.
There was an article. Sorry, there was an article in the Economist in the 80s about smuggling from the south.
I was not involved.
Sure?
From the south.
From the south, so it's people going to Newry, and they used to legally do it. Recently, you know, when drink in particular was a lot cheaper in the north. People used to do the Christmas shopping. In Newry. But anyway, this Economist article was talking about the 80s about electrical goods in particular, and TVs and fridges and the likes. And it said that there's actually more people in Dundalk today in Newry than there actually is in Dundalk because of all the smuggling that's going on of these electrical goods. And honestly, as you said, a blind eye was kind of turned to it. But it was the security issue that people, I think, remember most from the 80s and the 70s and the 90s. And then after the Good Friday Agreement, they eventually kind of just disappeared.
It took a wee while. There was a bit of a campaign. I remember the Shinners were all demanding a demilitarisation of everything now and digging up roads, and farmers were, trying to removing some of this stuff. And it didn't take that long, really, for the roads to open up.
But it was a long time. So once customs left, when the EU single market, which is January 1st, 93. So that's when most borders in Europe were stopped. That was not the case in the north and between the north and south because of the Troubles. So it still was a security border.
But young people today, you try tell them that they won't believe. They used to drive down to
didn't everyone tell them in Brexit? Didn't we warn that about Brexit? You know? The benefits of Brexit. This what could come back. And wasn't I think Leo Varadkar called rattling the cage? You know, he was saber rattling when he was saying.
That's right. No infrastructure would be acceptable.
Even though he was just saying what the head of the PSNI has said, you know, so that this could be a security issue. You know?
Any infrastructure on the border was deemed to be unacceptable, whether it was even a what do you call it, a CCTV camera or something on a very high pole.
The CCTV camera is quite intrusive, isn't it?
What?
Big brother is watching you.
Well, it depends who's pointing it and who's looking at it, to be honest with you.
I would find a CCTV camera like that. Yeah, that's...
so instead of having CCTV cameras on 310 miles of border, we now have a border at Larne.
Yeah, exactly.
Except if you're some sort of unionist who goes, there is no border at Larne. Well, there is a border at Larne.
Well, tell that to Jim Allister.
Yeah. Well, it's a good place for it, isn't it? Can we talk about another story from 1975 that became notorious? And we've kind of talked about this before, but it's the conviction of the Guildford Four. 3 men and girl get life for Guildford and Woolwich pub bombings. The 3 Irish men and a young girl were jailed for life yesterday for the callous, cowardly and pointless Guildford and Woolwich pub bombings. Mr. Jonas Johnson warned one of them, 21-year-old Paul Hill, at the Old Bailey that for him life meant life. If, as an act of mercy, you are eventually to be released, and it can only be on account of age, it can only be on account. I'll read that again because it's worth reading again. It is an act of mercy. If it is as a, I can't read it.
Do you want me to take over?
Yeah. Cormac, read that sentence because it's quite a good sentence.
If, as an act of mercy, you are eventually to be released, it can only be on account of age or infirmity.
Well read. I got that. Say no, sorry, that's to be facetious, but basically they were saying 21-year-old Paul Hill, who of course was innocent, as we now know, of the Woolwich pub bombing, basically been told he'll serve his entire life in jail for something he did not do, which is he liked to remind people afterwards. You were kind of going, wow, this is. But even at this stage, I think the Irish News and various people were accepting. At the early stage, that they were probably guilty, you know.
Well, yeah, we spoke about the conviction of the Birmingham Six, which has only taken place a couple of weeks or months before that, and the Irish News seemed to have accepted that they got the right men. Yeah. But you know, there obviously is disconcerting comments about the way that the prisoners were treated, even though they were guilty. They shouldn't have been treated this way. That was kind of the line the Irish News was taking. So yeah, like I think most people, you know, that accept that the institutions of the state were the British state were, you know, robust. They were, you know, fair, judicious.
Yep.
I think that was the feeling, you know, that
they didn't think for a moment that the police would slap people about and make them sign confessions.
Yeah, and that they would be such a miscarriage of justice. I think that wasn't. You know, it wasn't prevalent, that thought, until the kind of campaigns got underway, really.
I can't remember the age of Paddy Armstrong and Carol Richardson, but Paul
they were very
Hill,
young as well. They were all
I think
very
young.
Yeah,
Paul Hill's only 21. Jerry Conran, I think, was 19 or 20 at the time.
Oh, was he younger? Was he?
Yeah, I think he might have been. He was. Yeah, I think he was
older,
very young. Yeah. He had to flee Belfast. That's why he got involved. Because he was basically up to minor petty crimes and was told by the boys to leave, and ended up in London. And I can't remember how they basically confession evidence was it that did it for them?
Yeah, and then obviously the Maguire Seven were associated with him as well. So the Maguire Seven were apparently in making the bombs. Basically, that was Mrs. Auntie Maguire's bomb factory, basically.
Aunt Annie's bomb factory. This was Jerry Conlon's auntie. Yeah.
So and then Giuseppe is arrested after that. Jerry's dad. So there's the Guildford Four who are accused of actually. The 2 bombs, the Guildford Four and the Woolwich bombings, but it's actually the people who made the bombs for those, the Maguire Seven. They're also convicted, and you don't hear much about them, but their convictions were quashed too. But they spent 15, 16 years in prison too.
Who's this?
The Maguire Seven.
Oh yeah, I know, absolutely.
You know they. So it was. So the 4 of them were the Guildford Four were accused of actually. Planting the bombs. And the interesting what the judge says here is that that for most murderers there is a particular intended victim. This was not so in your case. You did not care whom you killed, so as long as you killed a number of people. Your crime was not directed at those you killed, but directed at the community as a whole, every man, woman and child living in this country. You obviously tried to strike terror into their hearts and thereby achieve your aims. If you had known your countrymen better, it was a vain expectation. So it was very, very strong words from the judge, in condemning these people.
The Woolwich, again, forgive me for getting my timing slightly wrong. The Birmingham pub bombings were November 74.
Yeah, a similar time frame. I think it was a little bit
similar
before, was it? Yeah.
The Birmingham ones were horrendous. Killed 21 people. How many people were killed in
I think it was 7 or 8.
7 or 8.
I think,
it appeared to be indiscriminate kind of bombing of pubs.
Associated with British military kind of personnel.
Yeah, but that was
not Birmingham 6 were just discriminate.
Completely
bombs.
Indiscriminate. These ones,
civilians.
well.
Yeah, they knew that say British military person would drink, have been drinking in these pubs in Guildford Four. Now they obviously would have known they were going to kill loads of people who weren't.
Not saying that's any justification whatsoever, but that was the logic behind it. Was they were British Army or associated with the British Army pubs, and you remember. Remember sort of when I was at university, sort of early 80s, that there was a large campaign about the Birmingham Six. I think it started in the early 80s, but up until, I think from 75 onwards, it took a while before people started to say these convictions are unsafe.
Yeah, like I know Chris Mullen. He wrote
Chris Mullen, Labour MP. When he became a Labour MP,
he's a journalist, and I think he started on it like kind of pretty much late 70s, but he wasn't getting anywhere really until about the 80s. He didn't kind of becomes part of the public consciousness.
Yes, it took a long time before there were major campaigns to free the Birmingham Six and Guildford Four. And what's interesting is there's an incident that we discussed in the Balcombe Street gang, who were an IRA gang who had actually carried out the Woolwich and Guildford pub bombings. They are captured in a flat. There was a siege. There was the Balcombe Street in Balcombe Street. Last a few days. It was major news at the time. I remember all that very well. But they actually confessed and said, actually, we carried out the Guildford and Woolwich pub bombings, but it didn't have any effect because these people have been convicted. It was quite unusual for the IRA to admit that they did something that they hadn't been convicted for, but they did do that. And I think that was one of the things that eventually helped their release, because these people clearly had no connection with the IRA of any shape or form, as far as we know.
Look, they were totally innocent. They didn't know to do it. Like I think we spoke in a previous episode about the girlfriend of Paul Hill's testimony. Like this,
Oh yes, she was in Brighton or something.
Yeah, she was somewhere close by, and they were regular touch with each other. And she was an alibi for him essentially, or vouch for him, but that was all discarded because they had confession from Paul Hill, and he had been told that we're going to do something about your girl, if you don't admit to this. So there was and he also admitted to another killing as well,
which took a long time to get for that conviction to be overturned.
Brian Shaw, so that was in the 90s. That was overturned.
So all these, the Paddy Armstrong, Jerry Conlon, Paul Hill, Carol Richardson, do 15 years, not released until 1989. For a crime you did not commit would be pretty harrowing, I have to say. And I think I mentioned this before. I did see the play In the Name of the Sun about Jerry Conlon's life afterwards, which is a fascinating play. If you ever get a chance,
very sad, you said as well, isn't it?
Very sad, very emotive, quite funny as well in parts, but really sad. And brilliant piece of a one-man play, and an excellent piece, thoroughly recommended.
In the Name of the Father, how do you?
In the Name of the Father. Well, funny, I remember seeing it a long time ago.
It is a good movie. Like it's very well done.
But it's bollocks as well. Jerry Conlon did not run across the tables at the trial, and I don't think Gareth Pearce, the solicitor, did not go in and sneak out documents from various things, and it was all very silly. I think I did actually. Jerry Conlon was quite upset about bits of it.
I heard that,
saying that he shared a cell with his father and he didn't. I think it was one of the things.
For dramatic effect.
And there's
it was a great cast, though. Daniel Lewis, Pete Postlewaite, Emma Thompson.
Emma Thompson.
I enjoyed the movie, but it's like Michael Collins' movie or Braveheart. They're great movies.
No, Michael Collins is a documentary.
But in terms of historical accuracy, it's a question mark.
Are there any good films about Irish history? Who was in Parnell who didn't want to shave his moustache off?
Was it Clark Gable, was it?
Clark Gable, just wanted to have his wee moustache, not look like Parnell.
Yeah, imagine that. It was Clark Gable, so he probably got away with it.
We need somebody to make a good Irish history movie.
What about Roy Keane and Mick McCarthy?
Oh yeah.
Sorry,
Saipan, yeah.
Is it out there in end of October? Is it?
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
I look forward to that.
I look forward to that. I was in Japan for the World Cup.
Were you?
Yeah,
Oh, of course. Because you're Mr. Sportsman, you love your. Who's playing Mick McCarthy? Is it? Who's playing Roy
Steve
Keane?
Coogan. Steve Coogan is
playing
Steve
Mick
Coogan's
McCarthy.
playing Mick McCarthy. I can't remember the name of the guy playing Roy Keane. But
I didn't get the call. That's all I can say.
for to play who?
Well, but anybody, I'd like to play. Yeah.
Sir Alex.
My acting career.
You could have played Sir Alex.
I couldn't have done the court
Sir
accent.
Alex.
Sir.
Wait, have you ever see everyone call him Sir Alex? All the ex-players, except Keane.
Can we do a quick last story, because I find this quite interesting. Very quickly. Sale of poppies in 1925. Authorisation has been received from the public authorities in Dublin for the sale of poppies, and complete arrangements are being made by the British Legion Southern Ireland Area Office to commemorate the end of the First World War. A temporary cenotaph in which numerous wreaths were placed was erected in College Green, but owing to the necessities of traffic and so busy a centre, the cenotaph, if erected at all, would be placed somewhere else. So this is the official Irish Free State did little to commemorate the First World War, but the veterans and their families actually did so. And I read a book once by a woman whose name temporarily eludes me, and I'm going to apologise to her, saying that they were actually very large commemorations of World War. Despite what we'd see now, and poppies in Northern Ireland are still controversial.
And the controversial in South too.
That's what I was going to say. You think there would be more controversy, but there were very, very significant commemorations of World War One, up until the 20s and 30s and stuff, when people
Well, no, they always, I think, went ahead. The state never really got involved in it until recently.
Yeah.
In commemorating the First World War. It was only with the centenary of the First World War when the state actually got a lot more actively involved in commemorating those who died. Because you have to remember the biggest conflict in that revolutionary period was not the Easter Rising or War of Independence. It was the First World War.
Yeah.
You had 200,000 people, at least, I think, that enrolled, enlisted, and you had the numbers are very. It's understandable, the numbers of who died. You can go from some in the 30,000s to up to 50,000 almost, and we'll probably we'll never know, because there's so many bodies never been retrieved and all of that, but way more people died from in Ireland from the First World War,
of course,
and from all backgrounds. It wasn't that only Protestants fought, Unionists fought, and loads of Catholics.
Obviously there's the Ulster division, the Somme and all that, but there's the Irish divisions that fought and died in huge numbers, Gallipoli numbers and all that.
Exactly, yeah.
But some people might be surprised by this because of the victory of Sinn Féin and becoming the IRA and getting their treaty, that soldiers coming back after the First World War were some of them joined the IRA, of course.
Some did,
like Tom Barry.
Tom Barry was in the IRA,
but there was a
Emma
lot
Dalton. There's quite a few.
But there's a feeling, maybe it's incorrect, that sort of feeling of veterans coming back from First World War were kind of shunned, and that whole history was kind of forgotten about. But here you have evidence that there was fairly large scale commemoration of World War One.
And there is this feeling, and they were shown to a degree. There was say when Sinn Féin took over local government and other areas, they didn't want money going to housing, say for veterans. They wanted those who fought in the IRA against the British to get the benefits, offside. And they were shunned from the state in terms of commemorations. Armistice Day was never kind of commemorated from a state level for years. But they always had their own kind of commemoration every year. Right. That never stopped, and they could be quite large because so many people were affected by the First World War. There was very few families you'll meet in Ireland to this day who have not some kind of ancestor fought in the First World War, because it was, the numbers were huge that were involved in it. I wrote a piece on the housing scheme in Colester, which was specifically for First World War veterans, and that was 237 houses were built in Colester, North Dublin. Right. Just after the war, just as the Free State was coming into being, and now the British paid for it. The British government paid for it, because the Irish Free State government weren't going to pay for it. So the British government actually it was finished in 1923, just after the famine, after the Civil War, and the British government paid for it. But They were very proud of the people who lived in those houses. Were very proud of their contributions to the war and so on.
So can you buy poppies in the south these days?
Oh,
People
sure.
People wear them with pride down south.
You don't see that. There are
Don't
some
see
people who wear
many.
them. But like, there's this new Irish poppy, because I think a lot of people have that problem that the poppy isn't just about people who fought in the First World War,
Well,
Second
that's
World War.
Yeah, it's the Second World War, and then you get into
it fought for the British
Army.
Army wherever the British Army fought,
Yes,
including in Ireland. So that's where a lot of people have issues.
Yeah.
So I know Leo Varadkar had one, like it was kind of a shamrock poppy kind of thing. So it was kind of Irish soldiers that fought for the British Army in First and Second World War. So kind of distinguish it from British soldiers that fought colonial wars, should we say.
Imagine us having debates and discussions about symbols. Anyway,
Exactly.
Who'd have thought? Cormac, I enjoyed that. Thank you very much.
Me too.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you enjoyed that, subscribe and listen and catch up on the old episodes. That's all from this week's episode of the
Until
Irish
next time.
History Boys. Until next time.